Hi, and welcome to Investment Banking University, where we teach you how to become an investment banker. We're going to be talking about a very interesting topic today, which is a paradigm shift in business education, which is needed for the 21st century. The standard business and MBA curriculum in most business schools is broken down along siloed subjects such as accounting, finance, management, operations, and marketing. And it attempts to teach students how to be a mid-level functional manager at a large corporation for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, these jobs are mostly gone, having been shipped overseas or automated. This undergraduate business and MBA curriculum is thus outdated and not appropriate for the 21st century, when we'll have multiple jobs and roles throughout their careers and lives. The more appropriate field of study, which has yet to make it into undergraduate and graduate business schools, is known as Perpetuity Science. Perpetuity Science is the body of knowledge, methodologies, and optimization models related to the building and buying of perpetuities. It explains how perpetuities can be built, managed, and exited from to create wealth. Perpetuity Science is a paradigm shift in business and finance education in that it replaces those subjects traditionally taught in undergraduate and graduate business schools with a holistic methodology that integrates industry into one framework. So instead of a disparate business taxonomy along the functional lines of economics, finance, and accounting, marketing, we have an initial taxonomy broken down in relation to the perpetuity, what we're ultimately focusing on in building, namely the build side, sell side, and buy side. The build side refers to the building of perpetuities by entrepreneurs and corporations. The sell side refers to the selling of perpetuities by investment bankers and the participants in Wall Street. And then the buy side, which is the buying of perpetuities, which are the private equity groups and corporate M&A departments for major corporations. Within each of these three, we have various methodologies and optimization models that may touch on various subjects such as the functional, accounting, finance, and economics. By starting with perpetuity science, the student can better synthesize the various industry and the capital markets and how they fit together. When first learning about industry and the capital markets, one should first understand the nature of the perpetuity, which is the basis for industry and the capital markets. The perpetuity can be modeled with the following formula. Perpetuity value equals cash flow over R, where cash flow represents the benefit stream of the perpetuity associated with it, and R represents the discount rate associated with the perpetuity's risk of receiving the benefit stream itself. After understanding the nature of the perpetuity in general, we can then analyze the perpetuity within each different industry, how they are different. The differences are in the nature of the cash flow, the R or discount rate, the value chain. We investigate each industry according to these variables by building an index for each industry and then the subsectors within each industry populated by public companies. So they're going to be indexes based upon public companies in each industry and sub-industry. After building the index and subsector indices, we can then begin analyzing leaders in each part of the value chain. We then build financial statement models for the leaders in each section of the value chain and understand the drivers of performance in each section. We analyze each leader or target in relation to the phases of the perpetuity in terms of where they are now and the steps that need to be taken to move to the next phase, a bit about the 5 phases of the perpetuity. In doing so, one begins to think in terms of being a CEO. The CEO's role is to bring the company or opportunity through the different stages of the perpetuity by building recurring benefit streams, i.e. cash flows, and at the same time de-risking those benefit streams. And in doing so, the valuation of the perpetuity moves from backward-looking towards forward-looking, and the valuation is thus maximized. The CEO should thus be familiar with perpetuity science and the phases of the perpetuity. As the perpetuity changes, the formula for valuing the perpetuity as well as we just discussed. There are 5 phases of perpetuity building. And as we move through the phases, the role of the owner of the perpetuity becomes more passive, and the valuation becomes larger due to the size of the EBITDA increasing, the EBITDA multiple increasing, and the discount rate decreasing. The perpetuity becomes less dependent on the owner to exist and run as an organizational structure is formed coinciding with the division of labor, process automation, and revenue becomes recurring. These are the different phases of the perpetuity, starting with number 1, syndication, which is ultimately focused on getting to your first payment, modeled by PMT. Number 2 is a job shop, moving from separate or disparate first payment PMT1 to PMT2, PMT3. And finally getting to being a perpetuity. And that's actually the transition from disparate payments turning into a cash flow stream, which is modeled by CF over R, your cash flow over your discount rate. The fourth step is turning that perpetuity into a growing perpetuity. And that's where the formula for the perpetuity changes from CF over R to CF over R minus G, where G is the growth rate, which actually decreases our R in relation to the cash flow, which means it increases our valuation. We'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll get into greater detail on that. And then finally, the final phase of the perpetuity is diversified, and that's where you have multiple perpetuities that you're working with, perpetuity 1 plus perpetuity 2. So the goal of learning perpetuity science is ultimately the building, growing, management, exit, and buying of perpetuity. So ultimately, while learning about perpetuity science itself, the student is looking for perpetuities to create, how to advance a perpetuity to the next phase, perpetuities that should be exited from, and perpetuities that should be purchased. And so capabilities that each business student should have are associated with the 3 key questions of perpetuity science. And the 3 questions are, for the build side, for number 1, is how to build a perpetuity. Number 2, for the sell side, is how to sell a perpetuity. And number 3, for the buy side, is how to buy a perpetuity. And the key questions are associated with capabilities to be built learning perpetuity. And so as you can see, perpetuity science is ultimately what we should be learning in undergraduate business education in business schools and the MBA programs in the United States and abroad. So you can learn more about perpetuity science at Investment Banking University. And to learn more about how to become an investment banker, go to investmentbanking.com and download the free book, Investment Banking. That's investmentbankingu.com. Thanks a lot.